Hey everyone, True here, and today we are going to check out WALice in detail. We're gonna analyze her AI, her pros, her cons, general considerations, and where she will likely go in my tier list. First up, let's check the hate level of this new WALice, and it is kind of through the roof, I have to say. Really high. It can get quite crazy. Right from the get-go, we see if ally spirit is 6 or more, her threat level is already increased by 50%. That alone would already be very high. But then we get another multiplier that is also quite high. If she is below 50%, then it is 1.32 on top of that. If you have a lot of spirit going around. There is a modification, of course, if she has hold ground plus triggered and is waiting for her turn. It would be very useless to attack her then, so then the hate level basically shrinks to nearly 0. But on top of the first two additional threat levels that can trigger, and possibly quite easily at that, especially the spirit 6 or more, there is an additional hate level coming in when the Morphe rabbit, the magical rabbit, is sacrificed and she unlocks her champion form. Then permanently her hate increases by another 20%. If all these conditions are fulfilled, if ally spirit is 6 or more, her HP are below 50%, her hold count plus isn't triggered right now, and she has her Starlight Champion form unlocked, then the hate level is 2.38. I'm not sure if there's any unit that can actually reach a higher hate level than this. Moving on to the skill weights, we see Swift Strike with a basic 1.0 weight. Yeah, Swift Strike Plus is her backup skill, so that makes sense. She will pretty much only use it if there's nothing else to do, most likely. Call Morphe sits at 2.5, which is good. You usually want to call Morphe, but in some cases you might not want to do that. We have Magical Drain at 20.0, which is very high, but there is a modifier for Call Morphe, which could actually increase the skill weight above that 20.0. And if she is actually on hold ground at that moment, she might actually call Morphe instead of doing a magical drain, and there is a certain risk that she might die to burn or poison here. But of course, this would need to be confirmed in battle. This is just what we see here from the code. And Magical Star Shower has a 1.2 weight, so if there's 6 or more spirit, that should be her go-to attack, except if she is below 50% HP, of course, and can do the magical drain first, which is instant, so that makes a lot of sense. We're also gonna take a quick look at Morphe's AI, and there isn't that much to see here actually. We do have the pick weight at 1.0. There is no additional threat level, so he will potentially fly under the radar actually longer than someone like WALice, of course, if he sacrifices himself to make her into a Starlight Champion. That doesn't matter because he will be gone, but maybe if WALice actually dies before unlocking the Starlight Championship form, Morphe might actually be still around and survive for quite a while longer. And at that point, the only thing he can really do is Purify Heal, because he can only use the Morphe Force Field once. But it does get more interesting as well, because if you look into what the AI modifiers here are, it becomes apparent that he might not use the Morphe Force Field if he gets on the battlefield straight away, because if there is another guard, he will just use Purify Heal instead. If there is someone sleeping on his team, then he would also Purify Heal, it seems. I don't know if I quite like this, because the 100% guard is such an important feature, and having it go to waste would be a bit of a shame. One thing is clear: if he gets the turn and can use Starlight Sacrifice, which means WALice already lost her hold ground plus, but is still alive, then he will use the Starlight Sacrifice. There's no way around it. He will be gone, and will never return in the same battle again. Now on to the next part of this analysis, and we are gonna take a look at her good things first, and there are quite a few of them. First up, the attack all skill is just really powerful. The way it ignores pretty much everything except armor is definitely a very good thing, and of course her passive might activate as well when she does it and put some enemies actually to sleep, maybe even at hold ground or something like that. It is overall a super great skill. The 6+ spirit requirement is actually not all that high. Yes, it does cost 3 spirit, but what it does for it is absolutely worth it. Another strong skill, of course, is her instant drain. Very nice that she can use this whenever she is under 50% HP. No time lock, even though it only costs 1 time unit. Back to 100% HP immediately when getting the turn awake is a very nice feature, while simultaneously dealing a lot of damage to a single target. Also, she does have Hold Ground Plus, which is nice and also goes well together with that kind of instant drain. And of course, with the Morphe action, she can get a second Hold Ground Plus from Morphe, so that is nice. 2 Hold Ground Plus is good, but of course, it is not a long-term survivability guarantee. It is a unit that is quite strong against burn, which is technically one of the meta playstyles together with sleep right now. So this is another addition that makes sleep stronger potentially, as she can really put a hold to a burn team. I mean, also other teams, of course, but especially burn teams with her elemental advantage, with that kind of sleep passive with a chance of 30% to put an enemy to sleep that hasn't slept before. And all of her skills basically being nightmare skills that do not wake up sleeping targets is of course a very nice feature that makes her easy to use in any sleep teams. Especially important, of course, for her attack all skill, that this skill does not wake up sleeping targets. Similar to Storm Michaela, she can also reset allies with the Call Morphe active, though it is a bit questionable who she targets. I think she likes to target guards with this, which makes sense to some degree. Especially the Light Anya reset is a nice one. Same is true for Bright Miller to some extent. But of course, it's also nice if she is able to reset some units with entry effects. It will not be as reliable though as with Storm Michaela reviving Storm Jean. And when she uses Call Morphe, of course Morphe immediately comes onto the battlefield with his Lightspeed entry, as well having that Spirit Plus entry, so 3 Spirit are there immediately straight away. We also have the Enrage entry, which enrages all the units on the battlefield. And if she calls Morphe while her Hold Ground Plus, her first Hold Ground Plus was already triggered, Call Morphe will basically mean that Morphe immediately sacrifices himself, so he will produce 3 spirit on entry, he will produce 3 spirit for that kind of sacrifice, and for unlocking that Starlight Champion form on WAlice. And this means that she is basically guaranteed to immediately get the turn and use the Starlight Shower, the magical star shower, I suppose, because it has enough spirit and that's all she needs to do. And she will deal 450% damage to every enemy straight away. Of course, it would be nicer if Morphe doesn't straight away have to sacrifice himself, because he has that very strong skill, the Morphe Force Field, an unlimited 100% guard until the next turn of Morphe, which again is quite similar to Storm Michaela, although Storm Michaela automatically unlocks it when entering the battlefield, which I think is generally preferable, especially if we think about the future and have possibly some new effects that trigger when units enter the battlefield. So far, there's only the auto poison, but who knows, maybe there's some auto sleep as well at some point, and then this Morphe force field will not be able to activate. So yeah, That kind of instant turn when transforming is a nice feature, especially because she is permanently enraged and likely has enough spirit for the magical star shower. She will also unlock that kind of perma heal, which basically heals her for 15% every single turn that a unit takes on a battlefield. So she's healing, healing, healing. That means there's also basically no worries about something like Mega Poison even, that usually deals a lot of damage, but it, in probably 99% of cases, it will not be able to keep up with that strong heal. On top of that, in the Starlight Champion form, she's an absolute spirit factory. 50% chance on every turn to produce one spirit. Every turn means every enemy turn, every ally turn, which means there's just an abundance of spirit when she is in that form. But moving on to the contrast, and this is directly related to my last point here, it's the insanely high hate that WAlice can potentially reach. And in champion form, her hate is already increased, and then she's also a spirit machine, a spirit factory at that point, which means I think there will be a high chance that spirit is 6 or above for most of the time on that team from WAlice, and that means there's another 50% modifier for the hate on top of that 20% modifier. And then especially if she goes under 50% HP, she's a very, very, very important target for the enemy. Not just in terms of taking her out, but also in terms of stunning her. With stun generally being a bit of her weakness. Of course, there's the elemental weakness component, why she is weak against Storm in general. Yes, she does have the Hold Ground Plus, which saves her a bit, because she cannot just be taken out even when she is highly stunned and still has the Hold Ground Plus. Another good thing about that potentially is if she's highly stunned and already has her champion form unlocked, she's basically a passive spirit generator at that point and might actually draw in some useless attacks, although not the case if her Hold Ground Plus is already triggered. But in general, I would say the contra definitely outweighs the potential pros here in terms of her hate. This really high hate is a bit of a bummer for her. I'm really worried about her survivability. Another contra, I would say, is the big RNG factor that she has, for example, with her kind of sleep passive, which isn't automatically a bad deal, but I do think it's better to have a unit that consistently performs well and not just sometimes really good, which this unit more leans into, I think. Yes, it is good to have that kind of thing if you just want to get one lucky win against a very strong opponent, for example. But in general, you would want to be able to defend against all kinds of opponents as well, to defend your position, etc., etc. And I think the big RNG factor with her, not just with her sleep passive, but also with other parts of her skill set, is gonna be a bit of trouble. She's just, yeah, not really super consistent, I think. Then, of course, I have to mention the possible AI complications. I said it before. If she really prefers to call Morphe over doing a magical drain while she has Hold Ground Plus triggered and is burning or poisoned, that could definitely lead to problems, although this needs to be confirmed. But in general, I think her AI is a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, there are some very, very strict regulations on what she can do and what Morphe can do, and just not really super happy about that. I mean, Morphe as well, with his limited skill set, basically only being able to purify heal at some point, sometimes not using the Morphe force field when it actually might be better to do so. There's just a few hangups here with the AI that I expect. And again, this plays into the RNG factor that I mentioned earlier. If you can't really rely on the AI or on the skill set being used effectively, then this is definitely a drawback. Talking about not effective skill sets. We do see that Morphe basically sacrifices himself to transform Alice. He doesn't even have the ability to actually revive her if she's already gone at that point, which is a problem, especially because if Morphe is asleep when he would have to sacrifice himself to transform Alice, Alice might just die in between, and then he's still there, and the only thing he's left to do is purify, heal, which isn't super good, and he takes up one spot in your team. I mean, purify, heal in general, of course, is a very good skill, and especially if he can target 2 with it, that is quite nice. But the problem comes when you basically have a fit team that isn't having any negative status effects and has pretty much maxed HP, and then you would rather have a fully integrated unit that can actually do stuff instead of just healing your team when there's really nothing to heal or purify. Another drawback is that the Morphe skill locks up as soon as Alice reaches that kind of Starlight champion form, which I do not like. Basically, this means Alice is also completely locked into that champion form, and the only way to stop it will be death, which, considering her hit level, is something that might come to her sooner rather than later. And on top of that, we also see the Core Morphe skill being an active skill. So even if it's not locked up and she could use it or should use it, maybe she is asleep and not be able to use it. So for both Alice and for Morphe, I also see sleep, ironically, as one of the main weaknesses, because both these units have very important active skills that they have to be able to use, and so they have to be awake to use them and not skip their turn. One last bit of contra, which of course admittedly is a bit niche, but with that kind of heal unlocking in her Starlight champion form, where she heals 15% on every turn of an enemy or an ally, that also means that she might sometimes be prevented from using her magical drain. Of course, it is more important that she actually survives, but for example, if she gets the turn at, I don't know, 51% HP, then it would be nice if she can just use the magical drain, get back to 100% HP and increase her chances of survivability, but instead she will not be able to do that and just heal another 15%. It's not bad, but it also skips some additional damage potential because the magical drain is an instant skill and could basically be used on top of a magical star shower. So all in all, where does this leave her? Here you can see the results of my poll on this channel. From the true carrots, we see there's the most likely expectation that she reaches SS tier potential. I agree with that to a certain degree. She is definitely not top tier material in my eyes. Someone like Cinderella is just much better on a different level entirely. But if she is able to push back the burn meta, especially on servers where the burn meta is really established, and she can basically turn the hierarchy on its head and really push the sleep meta into the focus everywhere around the world, then she can reach the SS tier potential. Do I think this will absolutely happen? I'm not sure. I mean, she is super strong against burn, but is it gonna be a replacement? At the same time, she is weak against sleep and against stun, so there are some potential hang-ups there, especially because we still have some very strong storm units hanging around. I just think the S tier is more likely for her at this point. Not just because of the meta landscape. The meta landscape should actually help her with burn being so dominant and storm units being pushed back, but there's just a few too many possible hangups. I think she's just not as essential as some of the other units that were released before. She's also, I think, not as good as someone like Ludmilla and Clarice, who is another water sleep unit that was released before. And she's also not as consistent, and that kind of RNG factor could turn people off a bit. Although she does deal consistent damage with the magical star shower at least, and that perma enrage after she unlocks the Starlight Championship Okay, no, that wasn't quite correct. After she unlocks the Starlight Champion form is really nice, but yeah, is it enough? I mean, it is hurting some of the very recent burn units released before her, Nobunaga and Honochi, although Nobunaga, if she isn't slapped by WATERalice, could purify a lot of her teammates, and then the sleep is potentially wasted. But yeah, someone like Honochi definitely in some trouble there, although she still has the charge mechanic. In general, WATERalice definitely best to use in a sleep team, otherwise the passive might actually just go to waste and the other units on her team wake up the sleeping targets without dealing much damage to them or specific damage to them or having them skip their turn. With the Hold Crown Plus, she might also be a solid use in later platoons. This is also very valuable in terms of her long-term usability. But all in all, if you don't run an overdrive or a sleep team, I would personally lean towards skipping on her. Thanks to Nizetto, LensJS, and Saturn for the materials used in this video. I hope you found this informative in your decision. Do let me know how WATERalice performs for you in the comments if you decide or end up pulling for her or already have her. And don't forget to like and subscribe to become a true carrot. And as always, thanks for watching.